Rob J gave me an incredibly generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon and brings you today's video. Prosper Tonebound versus Witch King of Angmar, Braids, and Mary Reed and Anne Bonny. So we've just got Grixis colours today, and we are looking not too bad. Marionette Apprentice into Black Market isn't the worst. And then we'll have tokens for the Beseech the Mirror. Try and get something to refill our hand with. I usually pair this up with the One Ring, but didn't put it in this deck. We will try it. Draw into another expensive one, a Fevered Suspicion. So I'll get down the tap land here. Be nice to go for the Surveil land on turn 1, as we tend to, but there's no guarantee this will come in untapped, and we do want to be curving out as best we can. An Expedition map being played over here. There's a Phyrexian Tower and a Cavern of Souls. And we draw Baleful Mastery, which we can play for cheap if we need to. I'm glad we started off with 3 lands though. So might still be able to get a tap land. We'll play the Graven Cairns, and it can be the Marionette Apprentice. I'm not going to bother with a plus counter at any point with Marionette Apprentice. I don't think I've ever put the plus counter on. Make the token, and maybe make use of that token for sacrificing into the mirror. Magda the Horde Master for the Izzet player. Dark Prophecy, able to draw cards. They do have to draw and lose life to this, so it's not a choice, which can be relevant later in the game. And at the end of the turn, just before his own, cracks the Expedition map and can put any land into hand. Grabs himself an Ancient Tomb, and that is Sensei's Divining Top. Plays and spins that. And yep, haven't drawn into any lands in our first 3 turns. So luckily had all 3 lands. This is going to have to be a Badlands, I think. We'll risk someone going for a Blood Moon or something. Just a tap land for Mary Reed. And passing over to the black player, who gets down Ophiomancer, ready to sacrifice those, I was going to say spiders, sacrifice the snakes. So the first Death Touch snake is made at every upkeep. Witch King of Angmar is the first commander to hit play. Still no land for us, so I'll be drawing an additional card, making a treasure. I think I'll... 6 life is a lot, but I tend to make at least 1 creature and then leave it at that. And we can use it as a blocker at some point, probably lose even more damage if we don't use the token as a blocker. Probably lose even more life to the damage of a big creature swinging in, I mean, so usually worth it. And draw ourselves into a Bonehorde Dracosaur. Now there's a flyer that's come into play, so I was going to go for Chandra this turn, but I think we're better off going for Beseech the Mirror into something. It's noteworthy that there is a Pain land here, so we could maybe go for Obnixilis, Captive Kingpin. And then if anyone starts getting damaged by this, that'll trigger it as well. Yeah, I think that's fine. It gets us a flyer also. Sacrifice the Servo token as opposed to the 3-2, and that will allow us to bargain it. Triggers the Marionette Apprentice, so each opponent loses a life to that. And obviously the treasure went down as well, so that triggered twice. So it's a 4-drop that we want in order to maximise the size of the thing we were getting into play. The other thing I was looking at was, where is it? The Lalia, but attacks aren't that easy at the moment. I'm hoping we'll get more use out of the Obnixilis. So we miss a land on turn 4, which does not feel good. The Izzet player not struggling to make lands though. And there we see the commander hit play. Made sure not to tap down his Pain land here. Arcane Signet from the black player has plenty of devotion to black already, and a Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx in play. So tapping down 3 lands, we'll tap for 4 as it stands now. And there we see Braids or is a Nightmare, has 2 mana left and 4 cards in hand, but decides to pass the turn. Probably should swing in with the snake here because he's just going to sacrifice it anyway. I would say he would swing in at us so that it doesn't trigger the Obnixilis, but decides to just hold it back. So we'll draw at least 1 card to the Dark Prophecy. I don't think anyone's going to sacrifice anything into the Braids here. Just take the life. So when he lost life to the Dark Prophecy, it triggers our Obnixilis. We exile off the top a Reanimate, which I don't think we can make any use of yet. Ophiomancer brings the snake back into play. The Witch King of Angmar swings in at Braids. Temple of the False God into play as well, and does have his 5 lands in order to ramp with that. And speaking of which, a Cabal Ritual. And a Necro Dominance, haven't seen that one. This is the fixed Necropotence. So skip the draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you can pay any amount of life to draw that many. Does count as card draw, which could be relevant. Your max hand size is 5, and if a card or token would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So we're not going to be reanimating any of his stuff. He's at 32 and 3 cards in hand at the minute. Decides to draw 2 cards and stay at 5 in hand. Now let's see if we can start making lands or not. Definitely making a treasure with the black market connections. See a Dark Ritual, which could come in handy for us. We'll just go with the top 2 abilities here. Wow, still no land. So we can go 3, 4, 5 and 6 mana into something. Maybe the Ancient Copper Dragon. Don't have haste, but that could start making us a bunch of mana if we're lucky. I think we just have to go for that. It'd be nice to go call forth the Tempest, but we're shy on mana, as you're already aware. So we sacrificed a treasure, which activates or triggers the Marionette Master again. And that triggers the Obnixilis, finally getting to a land, so that little combination doing well for us. So we're still only 1 land behind on the turn cycle, which is good. And there's a Liliana here. We can't make use of this reanimate, unfortunately, so do we show our opponents that we're looking at the Braids player as well? I think we'll take the 6-5 in over there. So they are down to 25 and 5 points of commander already, but shouldn't struggle to keep themselves in it this game. Mary Reed deciding to loot, discarding an island, and there is a treasure as well. Plays a Cavern of Souls of his own, this being a pirate tribal list. Direfleet Daredevil could have had in this list, so probably goes after the Dark Ritual, maybe even the Beseech the Mirror. Goes after Dark Ritual with that. He does have to actually cast it, doesn't he? He doesn't get it for free, so that makes sense. So of course casts it and accelerates his mana ahead by 3. And into an Inspiring Statuary, we're going to see similar cards between us because this guy wants to play with treasure as well. Bartering Blood. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice. So unfortunately, as much as I'd like to hold on to both the Marionette Master and the Obnixilis, I think we have to give up on the Apprentice. Just said Master, Marionette Apprentice. A single life was just lost somewhere. Oh, it must be from the Painland here, so Obnixilis continuing to do work. A tapped treasure for Magda, because a crime's been committed, and it's upon casting a Prismari command, so 2 damage to that, and they are creating a treasure token. See what we draw into here, just out of curiosity more than anything. I don't think we're going to be able to do anything here, although I've put Deflecting Swat in here, so you never know. There is Waltz Rage, another board wipe. And that might mean that if we get another counter, which we should do on the Obnixilis, then we might be able to use this pointed at the Ancient Copper Dragon, and that will wipe the board. Oh, but of course we're losing the Apprentice now, so yeah, that means that we have to give up on Obnixilis here, I think, because we're desperate for mana from this. It's unfortunate that we've just lost out on the Reanimate. We could have brought back the Obnixilis straight away. So some creatures died during the black player's turn. He gets rid of his token and the Ophiomancer, as you would expect. Draws more to the Dark Prophecy, has 8 in hand at the moment. And gets himself a Bastion of Remembrance to start trying to regain some life. Maya in Misery, each opponent sacrifices, so yep. So much for the... we could get rid of the enchantment instead and pray that we hold on to the Ancient Copper Dragon, but if we don't hold on to the dragon, I'm going to really regret getting rid of this. Do we want to gamble? This is the type of decision that changes the outcome of the game. Let's gamble. Rim Rakdos, we have to gamble. Braids goes into the left, and then sacrifices a token to trigger the Bastion and the Dark Prophecy. We are not going to get rid of a creature, so we each lose 2 life, or 3 life to Bastion. The Sensei's top being spun, and then it will be the beginning of the mono black player's turn. The only benefit here really being that there's a massive lack of black mana over here, so hopefully won't use what little black mana he has to blow up our Copper Dragon. Priority still being held up by Braids though, so he might be able to use Defile, and he does have 5 swamps, which would, yeah, kill off our Copper Dragon. Discarded hand size over here, by the way. An Illicit Shipment, a Boran Overlord, and a Dread Presence. So, yeah, like I keep saying, we saw that reanimate too early. Another black mana now made by the mono black player. into Toxic Deluge, and the gamble does not pay off. So triggering his enchantments again. So now pretty much our only option... There's always haste that we have to worry about from the Izzet player. We can go for Chandra and start making mana next turn. Or we could go for the Bone Horde if we do draw into a land, which we're not going to assume we're going to draw into a land, are we? Then we see another enchantment, going to be an enchantment heavy game. And it's not likely that we're going to see the back of those because of the colours that we're playing against. This was the reason to leave Black Market Connections in play. So let's see if our luck starts to change with these lands. Nope. But the benefit of a board wipe is that it's a good time to get your Planeswalkers down, so we'll see if we immediately spot some haste from our opponents. And we'll exile the top card. We can cast the card, but we won't be able to play the card if it's a land, I'm guessing is what that means. So we best just going for the foretell on this with the 2 mana. I think that's better. Either way, we're putting 1 loyalty onto Chandra. So that sets us up for another turn. We can go for 6 mana onto this, 5 damage onto everything. Obviously could have gone for Prosper there as well. Might do that next turn. But if we, once again, if we get into a land next turn, then we'll have 3 mana left up after the Prosper, which might mean we can go for Bedevil. Chasm Skulker is likely going to want to see a board wipe at some point. Yeah, it's an enchantments game. Grave Pact is going to make things scary. Yeah, that's going to make things really difficult. There's no sack outlet at least. He's got even more devotion to black now. A Thought Vessel is going to enter play. And I don't think I remember to put Demolition Field in this deck either. We do have Chaos Warp, which can get rid of this. And now a Plaguecrafter, so not going to have the Planeswalker last all that long. We're just destined to never make any mana this game. Mary Reed and Anne Bonny decide to loot. Might be able to get some kind of counter spell. They get a plus counter on the Skulker, so maybe they're just looking to sacrifice that into some squid. Deciding to bin a Windfall is interesting. And so triggers now is Chasm Skulker gets to resolve first, thankfully, because there's also a Grave Pact on the stack. Dark Prophecy, lose a life and draw, drain with the Remembrance. And another one. Merciless Executioner, sacrifice a creature. Still 5 cards in hand for Braids. So you can see why the big flyers were swinging in at this player when we had the chance, because Braid's always a difficult deck to get rid of. Call of the Ring triggering for the first time. Can't have a Ring Bearer, but can still be tempted by the ring. And because he can't have a Ring Bearer, no creature in play, he can't draw the additional card with this. Praetor's Grasp going over to the Braids player, searching for a card and exiling it face down. And not done there, a No Mercy. You'll never guess what card type that is. It is funny how the board states play out depending on the colours you're up against. Okay, a Valakut Exploration. We can only trigger that with something called Landfall, and the way you trigger Landfall is by playing lands. So I think we just finally have to try and get down our commander and hope that we don't see any more Edict effects. I mean, it might be that our opponent just plays Braids into a creature, sacrifices it and triggers Grave Pact again next turn, but I mean, what else are we going to do? And now we're probably going to exile a land off the top with Prosper, because that's just the way it works. No, it's Ramp at least, a Rakdos Signet. Nadir Kraken, played for the, what looks like Pirates and Sea Monsters. Doesn't have to crack his treasure thanks to the Inspiring Statuary, so manages to play a Frantic Search without cracking any. And when he draws the cards, the triggers from the Kraken go on the stack, so it looks as though he's deciding to pay for that. Burglar Rat, when it enters, each opponent discards a card. So that's the creature that he's going to sacrifice this turn most likely. Let's just get rid of Fevered Suspicion, because if we're going to play anything big it's probably Call Forth the Tempest. Alright, instead uses Diabolic Intent to sacrifice it, so Grave Pact doing what we thought it would, making a giant headache for us. We do have the black means of getting rid of enchantments, Feed the Swarm and the other 3 mana instant speed one that's been printed, but obviously we need to actually get into them first. And after that it is Rise of the Dark Realms, so I'm assuming that's what he tutored for and he sees some stuff in the graveyard he likes. Only 1 card in hand for the Izzet player, who doesn't seem to be too heavy on counters and has actually discarded a Negate at some point. So it must be a really good card he's got in hand. We'll expect to see that on the next turn. So here into play we see the Magda, Direfleet Daredevil, our Obnixilis, Orpheomancer's back, Marionette Apprentice, the Abhorrent Overlord, Dread Presence, an Ancient Copper Dragon, Playcrafter, Chasm Skulker, Merciless Executioner, and the Burglar Rat, so I'll have to discard. In fact, we're going to have to discard 2 thanks to Playcrafter. So I think we just have to get rid of the spot removal here, because I'm thinking it's just Rakdos Signet into Valakut Restoration, or Exploration, and hope that we can actually make use of that at some point. So with the deaths on the mono black player side of the field, it triggers all the enchantments again, and he decided to sack the Chasm Skulker, which didn't have any plus counters on it. I think I would have sacrificed the Burglar Rat personally. Chaos Warp goes on to the Grave Pact. Okay. Strange that he waited to do the Grave Pact. Looks as though he got himself into a Scepter of Eternal Glory, so even more mana. And someone's lost 1 life exactly, so that is a card draw from Obnixilis. So Marionette Apprentice is triggered from the Chasm Skulker being sacrificed, I think. Which of course triggers another card draw, or an exile from the Obnixilis. So we see a couple of lands in exile, and discarding the Baleful Mastery. Crime was committed, so our land comes into play tapped. And with the Direfleet Daredevil, they have targeted our Beseech the Mirror. The Pirate player scoops in the middle of all this, and so does this player, so a bunch of Harpy tokens from the Abhorrent Overlord, is it called? Yep. So now, if they got themselves into a sack outlet, they could just sacrifice all these and see a bunch of cards from Obnixilis. So continuing to trigger the combo of Marionette Apprentice and Obnixilis. We've seen a bunch of swamps in Garrick's Wake and Cabal Coffers. Alright, and now our opponent just losing time on the clock. I'm not sure what he's waiting for, so I think we'll just call it a day here. I'm not going to do anything, and I'm just going to let them swing in and kill me off next turn, which might add too many triggers on the stack for me to want to sit through. So it looks as though definitely should have kept hold of the black market connections, but I'm not sure the connections would have made that much of a difference to the game anyway. We were just too well controlled by Abrades, as Abrades tends to, so we'll leave it there. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next one, I hope. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.